What happens when Hollywood's beloved maverick meets late night's most ruthless host? The result was an unprecedented television moment that left audiences stunned and the industry buzzing. Tonight, we're diving into the shocking confrontation between Johnny Depp and Jimmy Kimmel that led to one of the most controversial talk show incidents in recent memory. If you think you know what happened, think again. The story behind this explosive encounter reveals a side of Jimmy Kimmel that network executives never wanted you to see. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and drop a comment below with your thoughts on who was really in the wrong here. The night started like any other at the Jimmy Kimmel Live studio in Los Angeles. The audience buzzed with anticipation as they waited for Hollywood icon Johnny Depp to grace the stage. The actor, known for his charismatic screen presence and thoughtful interviews, was there to promote his latest project, a role that many critics were already calling a career renaissance. But what should have been a standard promotional appearance quickly descended into something far more revealing about the true nature of late-night television and its hosts. Johnny Depp emerged to thunderous applause, dressed in his signature eclectic style, waving graciously to the audience as he made his way to the guest chair. The initial exchange seemed cordial enough, with Kimmel opening with practiced enthusiasm about Depp's new project. However, keen-eyed viewers noticed something off about Kimmel's demeanor from the start. His smile never quite reached his eyes, and there was an unmistakable edge to his voice. "Johnny, welcome back to the show," Kimmel began, leaning forward with a smile that appeared more predatory than welcoming. "It's been, 3 years since you've been on this couch?" Depp nodded thoughtfully, settling into his seat. "Yes, I believe it has been about that long, Jimmy. Thank you for having me back." 3 years is a long time," Kimmel continued, his tone shifting subtly. "A lot can happen in 3 years, can't it? Especially in your case." The audience's laughter had an uncomfortable edge as they sensed the conversation veering into potentially contentious territory. Depp, ever the professional, maintained his composure, offering a measured smile. "Life happens, as they say, but I'm grateful to be here discussing the work. This film was truly a labor of love for everyone involved." Kimmel seemed uninterested in discussing the film, brushing past Depp's comment with a dismissive wave. "Sure, the movie, we'll get to that. But first, I think our audience would love to hear about the, shall we say, more colorful aspects of your personal life recently." The camera caught Depp's momentary surprise, a flicker of discomfort crossing his face, before he regained his characteristic calm. The actor was known for his thoughtful, often philosophical approach to interviews, rarely engaging in the tabloid aspects of celebrity. "I've always believed that the work should speak for itself, Jimmy. The characters, the stories we tell, that's what matters in the end." Kimmel's laugh cut through the air, sharp and dismissive. "Come on, Johnny, we're all friends here. You can drop the mysterious artist act. The audience wants the real story." The studio grew uncomfortably quiet. This wasn't the typical light-hearted banter audiences had come to expect from late-night television. There was something almost aggressive in Kimmel's approach, a pushing of boundaries that seemed designed to provoke rather than entertain. Depp shifted in his seat, but maintained his dignity. "I'm afraid I don't quite follow, Jimmy. I'm here to discuss the film, which I'm incredibly proud of. The entire cast and crew poured their hearts into this project." Right, Kimmel interrupted, his eyes narrowing slightly. "The film where you play a misunderstood outcast. Typecasting, wouldn't you say?" The audience's collective intake of breath was audible. Kimmel had crossed an unspoken line, and everyone in the studio knew it. The cameras panned to Depp, who sat silently for a moment, studying Kimmel with a measured gaze. "You know, Jimmy," Depp finally said, his voice quiet but clear, "I've always appreciated how talk show hosts create a space for genuine conversation. It's quite an art form when done with respect." The emphasis on the word respect hung in the air, but Kimmel either missed or deliberately ignored the subtle rebuke. "Speaking of art forms," Kimmel pressed on, consulting his notes with exaggerated interest. "Let's talk about some of your more, shall we say, erratic behavior on set. I have it on good authority that your lateness cost one production millions of dollars." The accusation landed like a slap. The audience's discomfort was palpable now, many shifting awkwardly in their seats. This wasn't entertainment. It was beginning to feel like an ambush. Depp's expression remained calm, though a certain weariness had entered his eyes. "I've been fortunate to work with many wonderful directors and crews throughout my career. Filmmaking is collaborative, and every set has its own rhythm and challenges. I respect the process too much to disrupt it intentionally." "So, you're denying the reports?" Kimmel pressed, leaning forward with an intensity that seemed inappropriate for what was supposed to be a promotional interview. "What I'm saying, Jimmy, is that perhaps we might focus on the creative aspects of the work rather than unsubstantiated rumors." Depp's response was measured, his tone remaining even, despite the increasingly hostile line of questioning. A tense silence followed, broken only when Kimmel forced a laugh and turned to the audience. "He's not going to answer that one, folks. Let's try something else." The camera caught a brief exchange of glances between Kimmel's producer at the side of the stage and the host himself. Something unspoken passed between them, but rather than steering towards safer ground, Kimmel seemed to double down. "Let's talk about your relationship with substances over the years, Johnny. Our viewers are curious about how someone can maintain such a, let's call it, vibrant lifestyle and still function professionally." The question crossed another line, one that even seasoned Hollywood observers recognized as inappropriate for a broadcast interview. Celebrity interviews operated on certain unwritten rules, and Kimmel was deliberately shattering them one by one. The studio temperature seemed to drop several degrees as Depp regarded Kimmel with an expression that was difficult to read. The actor had faced his share of intrusive questions throughout his decades-long career, but there was something particularly calculated about Kimmel's approach that night. "Jimmy," Depp said after a moment, his voice remarkably steady, "I've always believed that a person's private struggles are just that, private. There are young people watching who might be facing their own challenges. What message does it send when we treat personal difficulties as entertainment?" A smattering of applause broke out from the audience, quickly silenced by Kimmel's sharp glance toward the crowd. The host's face flushed slightly, clearly not expecting Depp to respond with such eloquence and restraint. "Well, isn't that convenient?" Kimmel retorted, his smile tightening. "Hide behind concern for the youth while avoiding the question entirely. I'm just asking what everyone's thinking." The camera panned to the audience, capturing several uncomfortable expressions. This wasn't the playful banter they had come to expect from late-night television. There was an unmistakable hostility emanating from the host that felt increasingly personal. "Well, I wasn't aware I was hiding, Jimmy," Depp replied, a subtle edge finally entering his voice. "I came here in good faith to discuss a project that hundreds of talented people worked on for years. If you had questions about my personal life, perhaps they could have been mentioned before I agreed to appear." Kimmel laughed, but there was no humor in it. "That's not how ratings work, Johnny. Nobody tunes in to hear about some art house film. They want the real stuff, the juicy details." "Is that what your audience wants?" Depp asked, turning slightly to address the crowd directly for the first time. "Or is that what you want?" The question hung in the air, pointed and direct. Several audience members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while others nodded in agreement with Depp's assessment. It was rare to see a guest challenge Kimmel on his own stage, and the power dynamic in the room was noticeably shifting. "Let's take a quick break," Kimmel announced abruptly, turning to the camera with his professional smile firmly back in place. "We'll be right back with more Johnny Depp." As soon as the commercial break began, the studio erupted with activity. Kimmel's producers huddled around him, while makeup artists rushed to touch up both men. Though the microphones were off, those seated in the front rows could see the tense exchange continuing between host and guest. Depp remained seated, declining the offer of water from a nervous production assistant. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes never left Kimmel, who was gesturing animatedly to his executive producer. When the cameras began rolling again, Kimmel's smile appeared rejuvenated, though his eyes held a determined gleam. "Welcome back, everyone. We're here with Johnny Depp, discussing his, well, interesting career choices." "Actually, Jimmy," Depp interjected smoothly, "we haven't discussed the film at all yet." "Right," Kimmel said dismissively. "The film. Let's see. You play a troubled artist with personal demons, who's misunderstood by society. Stop me if you've heard this one before." The mockery was unmistakable, and a few uncomfortable laughs rippled through the audience. "Each character has their own truth," Depp responded evenly. "Much like each interview, apparently, has its own agenda." The subtle comment wasn't lost on Kimmel, whose expression hardened momentarily before he forced another smile. "Speaking of agendas, let's talk about your reputation for being difficult on set. I've got a quote here from a director who worked with you who said, and I'm quoting directly, 'Johnny exists in a different reality than the rest of us.'" Depp raised an eyebrow. "And which director would that be, Jimmy?" "I'm not at liberty to say," Kimmel replied with a smug smile. "Confidential source and all that." "Convenient," Depp noted, his tone remaining measured despite the provocation. "It's remarkable how often unnamed sources have the most cutting things to say." "Are you suggesting I'm making it up?" Kimmel challenged, leaning forward aggressively. "I'm suggesting," Depp said carefully, "that journalism, even entertainment journalism, typically requires verification. But perhaps the standards are different in late night." The statement caused several audience members to audibly react. Kimmel's reputation for skewering guests was well known, but rarely had anyone seen him matched so evenly in verbal sparring. "Let's move on," Kimmel said tightly, shuffling his note cards. "Your new film deals with themes of public perception versus reality. Given your own experience with the media, do you find it ironic that you're playing someone fighting against public opinion?" The question itself wasn't entirely unreasonable, but Kimmel's tone made it clear it was another trap, rather than a genuine inquiry. "Not ironic, no," Depp answered thoughtfully. "Perhaps fitting. All of us, in some way, experience the gap between who we are and how we're perceived. Art often explores that distance. It's what makes storytelling so powerful." For a moment, Kimmel seemed taken aback by the sincerity of the response, but the momentary connection quickly evaporated as he pressed forward with his agenda. "Right, right, very profound," Kimmel said, with barely disguised sarcasm, "but let's talk about what people really want to know. Your lavish spending habits have been widely reported. $6 million, 0 cents. On cannons to scatter someone's ashes, islands, a wine habit that costs more than most people's homes. Care to comment on that?" A tangible tension spread throughout the studio. Even Kimmel's band leader shot a concerned glance toward the producer, who was now standing just off camera with a worried expression. "Jimmy," Depp said, his voice quieter now, forcing Kimmel to lean in slightly to hear him. "I've been in this industry long enough to understand how it works. I know that controversy drives ratings. I know that networks push for moments that will go viral. But I also know that there's a human cost to treating people's lives as entertainment fodder." "That's rich coming from someone who makes millions playing pretend," Kimmel countered sharply. "Acting isn't about pretending," Depp replied, unruffled by the jab. "It's about finding truth, even in fictional circumstances, something that seems increasingly rare in television." The comment landed precisely as intended. Kimmel's face flushed with anger as he realized he was losing control of the interview entirely. The audience, initially uncertain about the unusual tension, was now clearly captivated by the authentic exchange unfolding before them. "Well, Johnny," Kimmel said, his voice taking on an edge that even regular viewers would recognize as unusual, Perhaps if you spent as much time preparing for interviews as you do philosophizing about the nature of truth, we might have a more productive conversation. I prepared to discuss the film, Depp replied simply. You prepared for something else entirely. The statement hung in the air between them, a direct challenge to Kimmel's professionalism. The host's expression darkened as he realized he was being called out on his own show. Let me be clear about something, Kimmel said, dropping any pretense of friendliness. This is my show. My name is on it. I decide what we talk about here. And that, Depp responded calmly, is precisely the problem with entertainment today, isn't it? The belief that having power means you no longer need respect or integrity. Gasps rippled through the audience. Kimmel's producer was now frantically signaling from the sidelines, drawing a finger across his throat in the universal sign to cut the segment. But Kimmel, now visibly angry, ignored him completely. You want to talk about respect and integrity? Kimmel's voice had risen noticeably. That's quite something coming from you, considering your history. The studio fell silent as Kimmel's words hung in the air. Even the band had stopped their usual background fills, sensing the unprecedented tension on stage. My history, Depp repeated quietly, nodding slowly. I've never claimed to be perfect, Jimmy. The difference is, I don't sit in judgment of others while pretending to welcome them as guests. Kimmel's face contorted with barely contained rage. Don't lecture me about hospitality. You think you can come on my show and— Your show, Depp interrupted, his voice remaining calm despite the escalation. That's the third time you've emphasized that point. Perhaps that's where the problem lies. The audience was completely still now, witnessing something rarely seen on network television: authentic conflict without the safety net of scripted entertainment. What exactly are you implying? Kimmel demanded, his professional facade completely abandoned. I'm not implying anything, Depp replied. I'm stating directly that there's a difference between interviewing someone and ambushing them, between conversation and confrontation, between entertainment and exploitation. Kimmel jabbed a finger toward Depp. You don't get to come here and dictate how this works. We invited you as a courtesy. A courtesy? Depp echoed with a sad smile. Is that what we're calling it now? The host's producer was now on stage, urgently whispering in Kimmel's ear, but the host shrugged him off violently. You know what, Johnny? I think we're done here, Kimmel announced abruptly, turning to address the camera. We'll be right back after this break, with a guest who actually appreciates the platform we provide. Depp remained seated, his expression one of calm resolve rather than anger. That's unfortunate, Jimmy. I think your audience deserved to hear about the film and the extraordinary work of everyone involved. Security, Kimmel called out suddenly, motioning toward Depp. Please escort Mr. Depp off the stage. A collective gasp erupted from the audience. 2 security guards appeared from the wings, clearly uncomfortable with the task they'd been assigned. That won't be necessary, Depp said, rising smoothly from his chair. He buttoned his jacket and addressed the audience directly. I apologize that we couldn't share more about the film tonight. I hope you'll still consider supporting the incredible work of everyone involved. With a slight nod to the band and a final glance at Kimmel, Depp walked off stage with dignity intact, leaving the host standing alone, visibly fuming. Cut to commercial, Kimmel barked at the crew, tearing off his microphone. Now! The cameras continued rolling for several seconds longer than they should have, capturing Kimmel's unfiltered rage as he stormed off in the opposite direction, shouting at his producers. When the show returned from the extended commercial break, a visibly composed but tense Kimmel offered a perfunctory explanation about creative differences before introducing a hastily arranged segment to fill the remaining time. But the damage was done. Within hours, clips of the confrontation spread across social media, with viewers overwhelmingly siding with Depp's measured responses over Kimmel's increasingly hostile behavior. The incident revealed a side of late-night television that networks had long tried to conceal: the calculated artifices behind the seemingly casual conversations and the egos that often drove the interactions viewers had been conditioned to see as friendly banter to. For Depp, the confrontation paradoxically reinforced what his supporters had long claimed, that behind the tabloid caricature was a thoughtful artist who refused to be reduced to clickbait fodder, even at the cost of valuable publicity. As for Kimmel, the fallout was swift and severe. Network executives called emergency meetings as sponsors expressed concern about being associated with what many were calling an unprovoked attack on a guest who had come in good faith. What started as an attempt to boost ratings through confrontation had instead pulled back the curtain on the increasingly toxic nature of celebrity culture and the media machine that profited from it. In standing his ground with dignity, rather than matching Kimmel's aggression, Depp had inadvertently exposed the fault lines in an industry that too often confused controversy with content and conflict with conversation. If you found this story revealing about the true nature of entertainment media, hit that subscribe button now. The industry doesn't want these behind-the-scenes realities exposed, but we're committed to bringing you the unvarnished truth. Comment below with your answer. If you were in Johnny Depp's position, would you have walked away calmly or confronted Kimmel more directly? Your responses help us understand what stories matter most to you.